The massive holographic display flickered to life in the center of the United Earth Assembly Hall, casting blue light across the faces of 300 delegates. Ambassador Sarah Chen stood at the podium, her hands steady despite the weight of what she was about to announce. Behind her, the seal of Earth's unified government gleamed against polished metal walls that had witnessed humanity's greatest triumphs and darkest hours. "Distinguished delegates," Chen began, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber's acoustic systems, 3 days ago we received formal communication from the Galactic Council of Unified Worlds. They have issued what they term a final invitation for humanity to join their governmental structure. A murmur rippled through the assembly. Everyone knew this day would come. For over a century, since first contact with the Zirathi trade vessels, humanity had danced around the issue of galactic citizenship. The Council had been patient, they claimed, understanding. They had allowed Earth to maintain its independence while gradually introducing humanity to galactic society. Delegate Martinez from the South American Federation leaned forward in his seat. "Ambassador Chen, what are the specific terms of this invitation?" Chen's expression remained neutral, but those who knew her could see the tension around her eyes. She'd been Earth's primary liaison with galactic affairs for 15 years, navigating the complex web of alien politics with careful diplomacy. Today felt different. The Council offers membership with full voting rights proportional to our population and economic output. Approximately 0.03% representation. She paused, letting the number sink in. In exchange, we would adopt their standardized legal framework, accept their oversight of our military development, and submit to their trade regulations. The chamber erupted. Voices rose in anger, concern, and debate. Chen waited for quiet before continuing. "There are additional requirements. Our educational systems would need approval from their academic oversight board. Our terraforming projects would fall under their Environmental Protection Agency, and any research into quantum field manipulation, artificial intelligence, beyond level 7 parameters, or exotic matter would require Council authorization." Delegate Nakamura from the Pacific Alliance stood, his voice cutting through the noise. "What happens if we decline their generous offer?" The question everyone had been dreading hung in the air like a toxic cloud. Chen looked down at her notes, though she had memorized every word of the Council's message. Economic isolation begins immediately. No access to galactic trade networks, no technology transfers, no scientific cooperation. They estimate this would set back our development by approximately 200 years. She looked up, meeting the eyes of delegates across the chamber. "If we continue to resist after a grace period of 1 Earth year, they reserve the right to take appropriate measures to ensure galactic stability." The silence that followed was deafening. Everyone understood the euphemism. Appropriate measures meant invasion, conquest, the complete subjugation of humanity to alien rule. It had happened before to other species who'd proven too stubborn or too dangerous to leave alone. Director General Williams, Earth's highest elected official, rose from his seat in the front row. His weathered face bore the lines of a man who'd spent 40 years in public service, including the devastating Martian colony crisis and the Luna independence movement. He'd seen humanity at its worst and best, and right now, he looked tired. "The Council representatives made it clear this isn't a negotiation," Williams said, his voice carrying easily through the chamber's systems. "They've given us 30 days to provide our answer. They expect submission, or they'll make the decision for us." Young Delegate Park from the Korean Peninsula stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. "With respect, Director General, this is exactly the kind of choice that made our ancestors fight for independence from imperial powers on Earth. Are we seriously considering surrendering our sovereignty because they have bigger ships?" Murmurs of agreement rippled through sections of the chamber, but they were met with equally vocal opposition. Delegate Thompson from the British Isles shook his head vigorously. "This isn't the 18th century, Delegate Park. We're not talking about muskets versus cannons. Their technology is thousands of years ahead of ours. They have weapons that can sterilize planets from orbit. Our entire population could be eliminated before our ships even knew they were under attack." "So we just give up?" Park shot back. "Accept that humanity will always be junior partners in someone else's empire?" The debate that followed consumed 3 hours. Delegate after delegate rose to speak, presenting arguments that had been refined in countless committee meetings and private discussions. The pragmatists pointed to the undeniable technological gap, the economic benefits of council membership, the scientific knowledge that would be shared. The idealists spoke of human dignity, the value of self-determination, the precedent of submission that would echo through generations. Admiral Reyes, representing the Solar Defense Command, provided a military assessment that sobered many delegates. Our current fleet consists of 47 capital ships, 300 cruisers, and approximately 800 smaller vessels. Intelligence estimates suggest the Zerathi Empire alone maintains a fleet 10 times that size, with technology we can barely comprehend.
The Vorthak Collective's military makes the Zerathi look peaceful. He gestured to a holographic display showing comparative ship designs.
Their standard battlecruiser carries weapons that could crack Luna in half. Their shields can deflect anything in our current arsenal. These are just the species we know about. The Council represents over 7,000 worlds. But Admiral Zhang from the Luna Defense Corps offered a different perspective. Numbers aren't everything, Admiral Reyes. The Vorthak thought they were invincible until the Kepler resistance showed them otherwise. Small, determined forces can achieve things that conventional analysis says are impossible. The Kepler resistance lasted 6 months, Reyes countered. Then the Vorthak glassed their homeworld and enslaved the survivors. Is that the example we want to follow? The discussion continued deep into the evening, with delegates breaking into smaller groups, forming alliances and opposition blocs. The economic delegates generally favored acceptance, arguing that humanity could build strength within the council system. The military representatives were split, with some viewing resistance as suicidal and others seeing submission as a betrayal of their oath to defend Earth. As the session finally adjourned near midnight, Director General Williams called for a vote to be held in 1 week's time. Each of Earth's major political entities would cast their ballots, and a simple majority would determine humanity's response. In the days that followed, the debate raged across every medium of communication. News networks hosted heated discussions between experts and politicians. Social media platforms buzzed with arguments that sometimes turned violent in the physical world. Protests erupted in major cities, with some demanding submission to ensure survival and others calling for resistance regardless of the cost. Dr. Elena Vasquez, head of the Theoretical Physics Department at New Geneva University, found herself at the center of a particularly intense controversy. Her research team had been working on quantum field manipulation, one of the technologies the Council wanted to control. In an interview that went viral across Earth's networks, she made a statement that would be quoted for years to come. "They're not offering us partnership," she said, her normally calm demeanor crackling with suppressed anger. "They're offering us a cage. A very comfortable cage with all the amenities, but still a cage. The question isn't whether we can win a war against them. The question is whether we're still human if we choose not to fight for what makes us human." Her words resonated with millions, but they also drew fierce criticism. Professor Chen Wei from the Beijing Institute of Strategic Studies published a response that gained equal attention. "Dr. Vasquez speaks of principle, but principle doesn't protect children when orbital bombardment begins. It doesn't rebuild cities after they've been reduced to radioactive ash. Sometimes survival requires difficult choices, and the mature decision is to accept reality rather than chase impossible dreams of heroic resistance." The philosophical divide reflected deeper questions about humanity's identity. Were they a species that had survived by adapting to reality, or by refusing to accept limitations? The answer would determine not just their immediate fate, but what kind of civilization they would become. On space stations throughout the solar system, human crews watched alien ships pass through their territories. The vessels were beautiful in their alien elegance, clearly constructed by species with aesthetic sensibilities far removed from human preferences. They moved with casual disregard for human claims of sovereignty, taking detailed scans of infrastructure and defenses. Captain Maria Santos, commanding the research station Prometheus near Jupiter's moons, filed a report that would influence many delegates' thinking. "They're not even trying to hide their surveillance," she wrote. 3 Zerathi vessels spent 4 hours mapping our fusion reactors and communications arrays. When we hailed them, they responded with what our translators called polite acknowledgement of our concern, but continued their scans. The message was clear. They don't consider our permission necessary for anything they want to do. Similar incidents occurred throughout the solar system. Mining operations on the asteroid belt reported alien ships extracting samples from asteroids without asking. The Luna colonies observed vessels conducting atmospheric analysis of Earth itself. Each incident was technically non-hostile, but the cumulative effect was a demonstration of how little regard the galaxy's established powers had for human authority. Yet even as resentment grew, practical concerns couldn't be ignored. Earth's economy had become increasingly dependent on galactic trade. Rare elements from alien star systems powered their most advanced technology. Medical treatments developed through cooperation with the bioengineering specialists of the Celestial Dominion had extended human lifespan by decades. Cutting ties with the galactic community would mean sacrificing advances that had improved the lives of billions. The final debate before the vote lasted 18 hours. Delegates presented their final arguments as the world watched. The weight of human history seemed to press down on the assembly chamber as voices rose and fell, carrying the hopes and fears of 8 billion people. As dawn broke over the Swiss mountains surrounding New Geneva, Director General Williams called for the final vote. One by one, the major political entities of Earth cast their ballots. The European Federation voted for acceptance. The North American Alliance voted for resistance. The African Union split their vote. The Asian Cooperative voted for acceptance by a narrow margin. When the final tally was announced, the chamber fell silent. By a margin of 4 votes, humanity had chosen resistance. The message sent to the Galactic Council was brief. Humanity respectfully declines membership in the Council of Unified Worlds. We choose to remain an independent species and request recognition of our sovereignty over the Sol system and all human colonies. The response came within hours, broadcast on all frequencies and translated into every human language. Council Speaker Tiska's words were delivered in the measured tones that had become familiar over decades of diplomatic contact. The Council expresses disappointment at humanity's decision. We withdraw all economic cooperation effective immediately. Galactic space is closed to human vessels. Technology transfers are terminated. We hope humanity will reconsider this unfortunate choice before more severe measures become necessary. As alien ships began departing human space, taking with them the promise of easy progress and comfortable subjugation, Earth found itself alone among the stars. The choice had been made, but the consequences were only beginning to unfold. In research facilities and military bases, on space stations and colonial outposts, humans began preparing for a future that would demand everything they had to give. The galaxy had expected submission. Instead, they got defiance. What came next would test not just human technology and courage, but the very essence of what it meant to be human in a universe that had no patience for independence. The economic collapse hit within 72 hours of the Council's withdrawal. Stock markets across Earth plummeted as companies dependent on galactic trade found themselves with worthless contracts and obsolete supply chains. The Shanghai Exchange suspended trading after the mining consortium Stellar Dynamics lost 90% of its value in a single day. Their entire business model had been built around processing rare elements extracted from alien star systems. Dr. James Morrison stood in his laboratory at the Advanced Materials Research Center in Colorado, staring at equipment that had become useless overnight. The quantum resonance scanners, purchased from Xerathi manufacturers at enormous cost, required maintenance components that would never arrive. The bioneural processors, grown in celestial Dominion facilities, would decay within months without their specialized nutrient solutions. 30 years of research, he muttered to his assistant, Dr. Sarah Kim, as they cataloged what could be salvaged. 3 decades of building on alien foundations, and now we're back to square one. Dr. Kim, however, was examining their situation with different eyes. She'd been part of the underground movement that had argued for human technological independence long before the current crisis. Maybe that's not such a bad thing, James. Look at this. She pulled up holographic displays showing the molecular structure of materials their lab had developed using alien-provided base components. We've been so focused on using their building blocks that we never explored alternatives. What if we developed these compounds using purely terrestrial elements? Morrison shook his head. The energy requirements would be impossible. The Xerathi catalysts make the process 1,000 times more efficient. Then we find better ways to generate energy, Kim replied. Or we discover different catalysts. Humans didn't reach the stars by accepting limitations. Their conversation was being repeated in research facilities across Earth's solar system. The immediate aftermath of galactic isolation was chaos, but within that chaos, something unexpected was emerging. Freed from the comfortable reliance on alien solutions, human scientists were being forced to innovate in ways they hadn't attempted in generations. On Luna Station, Dr. Elena Vasquez found herself leading a crash program to reverse engineer quantum field manipulation without access to Vorthak theoretical frameworks. Her team worked 18-hour days, fueled by coffee synthesized from recycled atmospheric compounds, and a growing conviction that they were on the verge of something revolutionary. The Vorthak approach is elegant, she explained to her team during a late-night briefing, but it assumes certain mathematical constants that may not be universal truths. What if we approach the same problems from first principles? Her lead researcher, Dr. Marcus Webb, had been skeptical when they'd started, but 3 weeks of intensive work had produced results that challenged everything they thought they knew about quantum mechanics. Elena, look at this simulation. If our calculations are correct, human-developed field manipulation could be more efficient than the Vorthak method. The work was theoretical, but other teams were achieving practical breakthroughs. In the asteroid belt, miners who'd lost access to alien extraction technology were developing new techniques for processing raw materials. Captain Rodriguez, commanding the mining vessel Perseverance, had his crew experimenting with magnetic field generators built from salvaged equipment. "We can't match their precision," he reported to Earth Command, "but we can process larger volumes of material. They might extract 90% of useful elements from an asteroid, but we can crack apart 10 asteroids in the time it takes them to process one." The agricultural sectors faced similar challenges. Alien-enhanced crops that had fed millions would fail without their specialized fertilizers and genetic modifications. Dr. Amanda Foster, head of the Global Agricultural Consortium, found herself coordinating the largest seed preservation and development project in human history. "We're going back to heritage varieties," she announced at a worldwide conference of agricultural specialists. Crops that humans developed over thousands of years, selected for hardiness and adaptability rather than maximum yield, will produce less food initially, but will produce it independently. The psychological impact of isolation was as significant as the economic effects. Humans had grown accustomed to being part of something larger than themselves, citizens of a galaxy-spanning civilization even if they were junior members. Suddenly finding themselves alone in the cosmos was terrifying for many, but it awakened something primal in others. Commander Lisa Park, daughter of the delegate who had spoken so passionately for independence, found herself transferred to the newly expanded Solar Defense Command. The military was undergoing the most dramatic transformation of any human institution, forced to prepare for threats beyond anything in their experience. "Traditional military doctrine is useless," Admiral Zong explained to a gathering of senior officers at the Luna Command Center. "We can't match their firepower ship to ship. We can't outmaneuver vessels that think in dimensions we're still learning to perceive. But we can make conquests so costly that they decide we're not worth the effort." The strategy emerging from dozens of war colleges and planning sessions was audacious in its simplicity: make the solar system a fortress that would break any invasion through sheer stubborn resistance. Every asteroid was being surveyed for defensive positions. The outer planets were being ringed with automated weapons platforms. Earth itself was being prepared for siege warfare that might last decades. Captain Sarah Chen's daughter, Lieutenant Alice Chen, was part of the team developing new defensive technologies. Working with engineers who had once designed civilian spacecraft, they were creating vessels optimized for guerrilla warfare among the planets and moons of their home system. "We're calling them ghost ships," she explained to her father during one of their rare conversations. "Small, stealthy, designed to hide among the debris fields and strike when they don't expect it. One human pilot, minimal life support, maximum firepower. If they want to take our system, they'll have to earn every meter of space." The ghost ship project represented a broader philosophical shift in human thinking. Previous generations had dreamed of exploring the galaxy, of taking their place among advanced civilizations. Now they were embracing the role of the defenders, the species that would make outsiders bleed for every victory. But not all humans were united in this vision. Economic riots erupted in several major cities as unemployment spiked and supply chains collapsed. The North African Federation nearly withdrew from Earth's unified government, arguing that isolation would lead to technological stagnation and eventual extinction. Brazil threatened to negotiate separately with the Galactic Council, offering to become a protectorate in exchange for continued access to galactic markets. Director General Williams found himself managing not just an external crisis, but an internal crisis of confidence. In an address to the Global Assembly, he acknowledged the pain that isolation was causing. "I won't lie to you about the cost of our decision," he said, his face showing the strain of months without adequate sleep. "People are losing their jobs. Companies are failing. We're asking an entire species to sacrifice prosperity for principle. I understand why some of you question whether we made the right choice." He paused, looking out at delegates who represented every corner of human civilization. "But I want you to consider what we've gained. For the first time in over a century, every solution to our problems is coming from human minds. Every breakthrough is ours. Every innovation belongs to us. We're remembering how to be human." The speech was broadcast across Earth and its colonies, and the response was electric. Videos emerged of research teams working around the clock on projects that would have been impossible under council oversight. Artists created works celebrating human independence. Children in schools across the system began studying the history of their species' greatest achievements, learning about the explorers and inventors who had never accepted that something couldn't be done. On Mars, the colonial government was dealing with its own unique challenges. Cut off from Earth support during the planet's 9-month communication delay, Governor Rebecca Torres found herself making decisions that would determine whether humanity's foothold on the Red Planet survived. "We're not just colonists anymore," she announced to the 40,000 residents of New Angeles, the largest Martian city. "We're proof that humans can thrive anywhere, under any conditions. If Earth falls, if the worst happens, Mars will carry on. We'll make sure that somewhere in the galaxy, human children are still learning to reach for impossible dreams." The Mars colonies began developing technologies that took advantage of their unique environment. Lower gravity allowed for construction techniques impossible on Earth. The harsh radiation environment led to breakthroughs in shielding technology that would prove crucial for long-range space travel. Most importantly, the psychological pressure of total self-reliance forged a generation of Martians who viewed problems as challenges to be overcome rather than limitations to be accepted. As the months passed, patterns emerged from the chaos of early isolation. Research teams working independently were making discoveries that complemented each other in unexpected ways. The quantum field manipulation research was enhancing the efficiency of the new mining techniques. Agricultural innovations were providing biological components for manufacturing processes. Military technologies were finding civilian applications that improved life across the solar system. Dr. Vasquez's team achieved their first major breakthrough on a Tuesday that felt like any other day until it suddenly became historic. Working with materials developed by Dr. Morrison's lab and energy systems designed by the Mars Engineering Corps, they successfully generated a stable quantum field that could manipulate matter at the molecular level. "It's not just equivalent to Vorthak technology," Dr. Webb reported, his voice tight with excitement. "It's better, more stable, more efficient, and it works with completely human-manufactured components." The implications rippled through every aspect of human society. Manufacturing could be revolutionized. Space travel could become exponentially more efficient. Weapons could be developed that might actually threaten alien vessels. For the first time since the ultimatum, humans began to believe they might not just survive their isolation, but emerge from it stronger than before. The Galactic Council, monitoring human space through long-range sensors, began to take notice of these developments. Council intelligence reports noted unusual energy signatures from human facilities, suggesting technological advancement at a rate that defied their models. Species that had submitted to Council authority had typically stagnated technologically, becoming dependent on alien innovation. Humans were doing the opposite. Ambassador Thiska reviewed these reports with growing concern. The Council's experience with resistant species had followed predictable patterns. Initial defiance led to economic collapse, which led to social unrest, which led to eventual submission or self-destruction. Humans were following a different path entirely. "They're accelerating," reported sensor technician Vex 9 of the Zarathi monitoring station. "Energy output from their manufacturing facilities has increased by 400%. Their ships are exhibiting performance characteristics beyond our previous intelligence estimates, and their military construction suggests they're preparing for extended conflict." This was not how things were supposed to unfold. Resistant species were meant to weaken over time, to gradually recognize the futility of opposing galactic civilization. Instead, humans were growing stronger in isolation, developing capabilities that threatened to disrupt the careful balance of power that had kept the galaxy stable for millennia. As Earth's first year of isolation drew to a close, humanity had transformed itself in ways that no one had anticipated. The comfortable reliance on alien technology was gone, replaced by a fierce independence that drove innovation at unprecedented rates. The economic collapse had stabilized into a new normal based on solar system resources and human ingenuity. The military had evolved from a traditional force designed to fight other humans into something unprecedented, a species-wide defense organization preparing to resist conquest by technologically superior aliens. Most importantly, humans had rediscovered something they'd begun to lose during their century of contact with galactic civilization: the belief that they could accomplish anything if they refused to accept limitations. The galaxy had offered them a place as junior partners in someone else's empire. Instead, they were building something that belonged entirely to them. The question now was whether it would be enough when the Council finally decided that humanity had become too dangerous to leave alone. The grace period was almost over, and alien fleets were beginning to move toward human space. The real test was coming, and everything humanity had built in isolation would be put to the ultimate examination. In research facilities and military bases, on space stations and colonial outposts, 8 billion humans prepared for a war that would determine not just their survival, but their right to exist as free beings in a galaxy that had never seen anything like them before. The Zarathi fleet materialized at the edge of the solar system with the characteristic shimmer of quantum jump drives disengaging. 27 vessels, each one larger than anything humanity had ever constructed, arranged themselves in perfect formation beyond the orbit of Pluto. Their sleek, crystalline hulls reflected the distant light of Sol, creating a display that was beautiful and terrifying in equal measure. Admiral Zhang stood in the command center of Luna Station, watching the tactical display update in real time as sensor arrays throughout the solar system registered the alien presence. Red icons appeared on the three-dimensional map, each one representing enough firepower to reduce a city to ash. Around him, officers maintained professional calm while their hands moved over control surfaces with practiced efficiency. "Fleet Admiral," reported Commander Morrison from the sensor station, "we're reading quantum signature displacement consistent with Zerathi battle cruisers. 27 ships total, with the largest measuring approximately 2 kilometers in length." Zhang nodded, his expression betraying none of the tension he felt. A year of preparation had led to this moment, but seeing the actual enemy was different from planning for theoretical threats. "Signal all defensive units. Implement Protocol 7. All civilian traffic is to clear the outer system immediately." Throughout human space, the carefully prepared defensive network activated. On Ceres Station, Captain Rodriguez oversaw the launch of automated sensor drones that would track every movement of the alien fleet. The asteroid mining platforms transformed into weapons emplacements, their industrial equipment repurposed for war. On Mars, Governor Torres watched as the orbital defense grid came online, surrounding the red planet with a deadly web of energy weapons and missile launchers. The Zerathi fleet commander, ship leader Vorth Kal, studied the sensor readings from the human system with growing puzzlement. Intelligence reports had suggested humans possessed approximately 50 capital ships and limited defensive installations. The readings before him showed a completely different picture. "Tactical Coordinator Zes-9," he said to a senior officer, "confirm these sensor readings. I count over 300 distinct defensive installations, plus numerous mobile platforms of unknown configuration." The sleek reptilian officer's crest flattened against his skull as he reviewed the data.
"Confirmed, ship leader."
The humans appear to have militarized their entire system. Energy signatures suggest they've converted civilian infrastructure into defensive positions. Mining stations, research facilities, even their agricultural platforms are reading as potential weapons emplacements. This was unprecedented in Vorth Kal's experience. Species facing Council authority typically concentrated their defenses around their homeworld, hoping to negotiate while presenting minimal resistance. Humans had turned their solar system into a fortress, with defensive positions extending from the star itself to the outer reaches of space. The communication came on standard galactic frequencies, transmitted in clear common and multiple human languages. Vorth Kal had expected the usual mixture of defiance and desperate negotiation. Instead, he received something that made his scales ripple with unease. "Zerathi Fleet, this is Admiral Zhang of the Solar Defense Command. You have entered human space without authorization. You have exactly 1 hour to reverse course and depart this system. Any aggressive action will be met with immediate and overwhelming force. We do not seek conflict, but we will not tolerate invasion."
The absolute confidence in the human's voice was disturbing. Previous resistant species had pleaded, threatened, or attempted to bargain.
This human simply stated terms as if his primitive vessels could somehow enforce them against the might of the Zerathi Empire. "Open a response channel," Vorth Kal ordered. "Human Admiral, I am ship leader Vorth Kal of the Zerathi Imperial Fleet. You will stand down your weapons and prepare to receive Council representatives. Your resistance to galactic authority cannot be tolerated. Submit now, and your species will be granted protectorate status with minimal restrictions." Zhang's response came immediately. "Ship leader Vorth Kal, you have 58 minutes to leave our system. We will not submit to external authority. We will not accept protectorate status. We will not negotiate our independence. Choose your next actions carefully." The transmission ended, leaving Vorth Kal staring at empty space. In 3 centuries of service to the Empire, he had never encountered such uncompromising defiance. Even the legendary Kepler resistance had attempted to negotiate terms before their final stand. "Ship leader," reported sensor specialist Tark 7, "we're detecting unusual energy patterns throughout the system. The humans appear to be charging weapon systems of unknown configuration. Some of these readings are concerning." Vorth Kal examined the tactical display with growing unease. Human vessels were emerging from hiding places among asteroids and planetary rings, their energy signatures suggesting technologies that didn't match intelligence estimates. More troubling, the defensive installations were generating power levels that seemed impossible for a species at humanity's technological development level. On Earth, Dr. Elena Vasquez stood in the primary control center for Project Prometheus, the quantum field manipulation system her team had developed during the months of isolation. Around her, technicians made final adjustments to equipment that represented the pinnacle of human innovation. The facility, buried deep beneath the Swiss Alps, hummed with energy that would have been impossible to generate a year ago. Field generators are stable, reported Dr. Webb, his voice tight with concentration. Quantum resonance is holding within acceptable parameters. We're ready for activation on your command. Vasquez nodded, knowing that what they were about to attempt had never been tested on this scale. The theoretical calculations suggested it would work, but theory and reality were often different things. All stations confirm ready status. We have one chance to make this work. Throughout the solar system, similar scenes were playing out. On the ghost ship Mercury's Shadow, Lieutenant Alice Chen performed final system checks on weapons that combined human ingenuity with reverse-engineered alien technology. Her vessel, barely large enough for a single pilot, carried enough firepower to damage ships 1,000 times its size. Around her, dozens of similar craft prepared for hit-and-run attacks that would test the enemy's ability to track small, fast-moving targets. The hour deadline passed with no movement from the Zarathi fleet. Vorthkal had decided that a demonstration of power would convince the humans to reconsider their position. A single ship detached from his formation and moved toward the outer planets, its mission to destroy one of the human defensive installations and prove the futility of resistance. The Zarathi cruiser Talon Strike approached what appeared to be a minor mining station on a large asteroid in the Kuiper Belt. Captain Zeth-4 intended to make quick work of the facility, destroying it with minimal energy expenditure to conserve power for larger engagements. The mining station showed minimal defensive capability on sensors, making it an ideal target for demonstration. As the cruiser closed to optimal firing range, Captain Zeth-4 discovered that appearances could be deceiving. The mining station suddenly blazed with energy signatures that his sensors couldn't properly classify. Weapons of unknown design opened fire, sending streams of coherent energy that struck his shields with devastating force. "Engineering report," Zeth-4 demanded as his ship shuddered under impacts that shouldn't have been possible from such a primitive installation. "Shield integrity dropping rapidly," reported his engineer. "These energy discharges are modulating at quantum frequencies. Our defensive systems aren't configured to handle this type of attack." More human positions opened fire, creating a crossfire that turned the space around the Zarathi cruiser into a deadly web of energy beams and exotic radiation. The mining station had been a trap, surrounded by concealed weapons platforms that emerged from hiding among the asteroids. Talon Strike found itself facing dozens of targets, each one using technology that defied their understanding of human capabilities. The cruiser's return fire destroyed several human platforms, but for every one eliminated, 2 more appeared. The humans had learned from studying alien tactics during their century of contact, and they'd developed countermeasures specifically designed to neutralize Zarathi advantages. Swarm attacks overwhelmed targeting systems, quantum frequency weapons bypassed standard shields. Most disturbing of all, the humans seemed willing to sacrifice their own forces to inflict damage on superior opponents. Ship leader, Captain Zeth-4 transmitted to the flagship, "Request immediate support. Human defensive capabilities exceed all intelligence estimates. They're using technologies that our systems can't properly counter." Vorthkal watched the tactical display with growing alarm. His advanced cruiser was being battered by what should have been insignificant human forces. Energy readings from the engagement suggested the humans had achieved technological breakthroughs that put them far ahead of previous intelligence assessments. "All ships advance to support Talon Strike," he ordered. "Deploy in standard battle formation. It appears we underestimated human defensive capabilities." The Zarathi fleet moved into the outer solar system, expecting to sweep aside human resistance through overwhelming firepower and superior technology. Instead, they entered a killing field that had been prepared specifically for their arrival. Every asteroid had been surveyed and prepared. Every approach route had been analyzed and covered by defensive positions. The humans weren't just fighting to resist conquest. They were fighting to prove that technological superiority didn't guarantee victory. Ghost ships emerged from hiding places among the planetary rings and debris fields. Lieutenant Chen led a squadron of 12 vessels in a coordinated attack on the Zarathi formation's flank, their small ships darting between the larger vessels and launching weapons that targeted critical systems. The alien ships were magnificent examples of advanced engineering, but their size made them vulnerable to fast-moving opponents willing to take enormous risks. "All units execute pattern Delta," Chen transmitted to her squadron. Target their sensor arrays and communication systems. Make them fight blind. The ghost ships performed maneuvers that would have killed their pilots if not for the acceleration dampeners developed during humanity's crash program of technological innovation. They wove between energy beams that could vaporize them instantly, delivering precise strikes against vulnerable systems. Several human ships were lost in the attack, but they inflicted damage far out of proportion to their size and cost. On the bridge of his flagship, Vorthkow watched his formation come under attack from directions he hadn't even known were possible. Human vessels were somehow maneuvering in ways that defied his understanding of physics. Their weapons were bypassing his shields with disturbing regularity. Most troubling, his enemies seemed to have no fear of death, pressing attacks that should have been suicidal. Ship leader, his tactical coordinator reported, were losing sensor coverage across multiple ships. The humans are specifically targeting our detection systems. They're trying to blind us. Before Vorthkow could respond, space around his fleet suddenly changed. Energy fields activated throughout the region, creating distortions that interfered with his ship's navigation and targeting systems. The quantum field manipulation technology that Dr. Vasquez's team had developed was being deployed on a massive scale, turning the space around the Zarathi fleet into a maze of gravitational anomalies and sensor dead zones. "What is this?" Vorthkow demanded, as his ship's system struggled to adapt to conditions that shouldn't exist. "Unknown technology," his science officer replied, his voice tight with concern. "The humans appear to be manipulating space-time itself. Our navigation systems can't compensate for these quantum field distortions. The battle for the outer solar system had become unlike anything in recorded galactic history. Humans were using every advantage their desperate innovation had provided, turning their entire star system into a weapon against invaders who had expected easy conquest. The technological gap that should have guaranteed Zerathi victory was being negated by human creativity, determination, and an absolute refusal to accept defeat." As reports of the engagement reached Earth, billions of humans watched their forces engage an enemy that had seemed impossibly powerful just hours before. The ghost ships darted through space like silver fish, the defensive installations blazed with energy that lit up the darkness between planets, and throughout it all, human voices maintained calm professionalism as they coordinated a defense that was changing the course of galactic history. The Zerathi had come to demand submission from a primitive species. Instead, they found themselves fighting for their lives against an enemy that had spent a year preparing for exactly this moment. The question now was whether human innovation and determination would be enough to drive off an invasion force that represented just a tiny fraction of the galaxy's military might. In the Quantum Field Control Center, Dr. Vasquez monitored energy readings that were pushing their equipment to its limits. "Field stability holding," she reported to Admiral Zhang. "We can maintain this for approximately 6 hours before we risk catastrophic system failure." Zhang's response was immediate. "6 hours is enough. All units, implement Phase 2. Let's show them what happens when humans refuse to kneel." The first phase of the battle had been a revelation for both sides. Ship leader Vorthkow retreated his damaged fleet to the edge of the solar system, requesting emergency reinforcements from the Zerathi High Command. 3 of his cruisers had been destroyed, 5 more severely damaged, and his entire tactical doctrine had proven inadequate against human defensive strategies. The species he'd come to subjugate had fought with a ferocity and innovation that challenged everything the Galactic Council believed about technological warfare. "Fleet Command, this is Vorthkow," he transmitted on heavily encrypted channels. "Human resistance capabilities exceed all intelligence projections. Request immediate reinforcement with Titan-class battleships and full siege equipment. These primitives have developed technologies that neutralize our standard tactical advantages." The response from Zerathi High Command carried the cold authority of beings who had conquered thousands of worlds. Fleet Marshal Corps Prime responding, "Your request for reinforcement is denied. 27 ships should be sufficient to pacify a single system. Complete your mission with available resources or face court-martial for incompetence." Vorthkow's crest flattened against his skull in a display of frustrated anger. The High Command refused to acknowledge what he'd witnessed in combat. Humans weren't simply technologically advanced. They fought with a psychological profile unlike any species in recorded galactic history. They sacrificed their own forces without hesitation if it inflicted damage on superior opponents. They turned their entire civilization into a weapon. Most disturbing, they seemed to improve their tactics during battle, adapting faster than his forces could counter. On Luna Station, Admiral Zhang reviewed battle reports with his senior staff. The first engagement had cost them 40% of their outer system defenses and 67 ships, including 12 of the precious ghost ships. By traditional military analysis, they'd suffered a devastating defeat. By human standards, they'd achieved a miracle. They expected to sweep through our defenses without significant resistance, John explained to the assembled officers.
Instead, we made them pay for every meter of space. More importantly, we proved our weapons can damage their ships and our tactics can disrupt their formations.
Commander Morrison, recently promoted after his outstanding service during the mining station ambush, studied the tactical displays with growing confidence. Sir, their retreat gives us 12 hours to implement the inter-system defenses. If we can channel them into the Jupiter corridor, the gas giant's magnetic field will amplify our quantum manipulation effects. The plan that had emerged from months of preparation was audacious even by human standards. Rather than attempting to defend fixed positions, they would use the solar system's natural features as weapons. Jupiter's massive magnetic field could be manipulated to create devastating effects on ships using standard galactic technology. The asteroid belt had been seeded with hidden weapons platforms and autonomous drones. Most importantly, they'd prepared Earth's moon as the ultimate defensive position, turning Luna into a fortress that could support their fleet during the final phase of the battle. Lieutenant Alice Chen had survived the first engagement, but her ghost ship bore the scars of energy weapons that had come within meters of vaporizing her completely. As she performed repairs in the hidden base within asteroid 2087, Delta, she found herself thinking about the enemy pilots she'd fought. They were skilled, professional, and utterly confident in their technological superiority. That confidence was also their weakness. They fight like they're conducting a police action, she explained to her squadron during their briefing. They expect us to behave like every other species they've conquered. When we don't follow their predictions, their entire tactical system breaks down. The human strategy for the second phase relied on psychological warfare as much as technological innovation. Every action was designed to convince the Zerathi that conquering humanity would cost more than it was worth. They would make the invaders fear that humans were too dangerous to be allowed to exist, forcing a decision between total extermination and complete withdrawal. Dr. Vasquez worked frantically in the Quantum Field Control Center, pushing her equipment beyond safe parameters to prepare for the larger engagement to come. Her team had learned from the first battle, identifying ways to make their technology even more disruptive to alien systems. We can create a quantum cascade effect, she explained to Admiral Zhang during an emergency planning session. If we overload our field generators during the enemy's approach to Earth, we can create a space-time distortion that will trap their entire fleet in a gravity well. They'll be forced to choose between destroying their own ships or fighting at close range where our weapons are most effective. The plan was suicidal for everyone involved in implementing it. The quantum cascade would likely destroy Luna Station and everyone aboard it, but it would also give humanity's remaining forces the opportunity to inflict maximum damage on an enemy that represented only a tiny fraction of the galaxy's military power.
Zhang accepted the proposal without hesitation.
How long do you need to prepare? 8 hours, Vasquez replied. And Admiral, once we activate the cascade, there's no going back. We'll either win or die trying. Throughout the inner solar system, similar conversations were taking place. On Mars, Governor Torres coordinated the evacuation of civilian populations to underground shelters that could survive orbital bombardment. The Red Planet's defense grid had been designed to make invasions so costly that rational opponents would seek easier targets. We're not trying to win a traditional victory, she explained to her military commanders. We're trying to prove that humans are too expensive to conquer. Every ship they lose here is one less ship they can use against other systems. The Zerathi fleet began its final approach after 18 hours of regrouping and tactical planning. Vorthkal had studied the human defensive patterns and developed countermeasures for their known weapons. His ships advanced in a tighter formation designed to maximize overlapping fields of fire while minimizing exposure to the quantum field effects that had disrupted his previous attack. What he hadn't anticipated was the sheer scale of human defensive preparations. As his fleet passed Jupiter, the gas giant's magnetosphere suddenly blazed with artificial aurora effects as hidden installations activated quantum field generators throughout the planet's orbital space. The magnetic field lines, normally invisible, became visible as streams of coherent energy that reached out to touch his ships. Engineering reports massive system failures, his tactical coordinator announced as several cruisers began losing power. The magnetic field interactions are creating electromagnetic pulses that our shielding can't block completely. The human installations around Jupiter open fire simultaneously, turning the space around the largest planet in the solar system into a deadly web of energy beams and exotic particle streams. But this time, Vorthkal was ready. His ships had been modified with additional shielding, and his tactics emphasized rapid movement through the danger zone. The running battle through the outer solar system cost both sides heavily. Human installations were vaporized by alien weapons that could crack asteroids, but each defensive position destroyed had inflicted damage on ships that represented decades of construction and training. The Zerathi fleet that emerged from the Jupiter engagement was still formidable, but it had been reduced to 19 operational vessels, and every remaining ship showed battle damage. The asteroid belt provided the setting for the war's most crucial phase. Human forces had spent months turning the region into a three-dimensional maze of hidden weapons, autonomous drones, and booby-trapped mining equipment. Ships that had once extracted metals from space rocks now served as improvised warships, their industrial equipment converted into weapons that could threaten alien cruisers. Captain Rodriguez commanded the converted mining vessel Determination, leading a flotilla of similar ships in what military analysts would later call the most successful improvised naval action in human history. His vessel had been built to crack apart asteroids for metal extraction. Now it was cracking apart alien ships with modified plasma cutters and magnetic field generators. All civilian vessels implement Pattern Omega, Rodriguez transmitted to his improvised fleet. Target their propulsion systems and make them fight at our speed. The battle for the asteroid belt lasted 6 hours and changed the nature of space warfare forever. Humans used every trick they'd learned in a century of asteroid mining, turning their industrial expertise into military advantage. They led alien ships into fields of debris that fouled their sensors. They used magnetic field manipulation to turn metallic asteroids into guided projectiles. Most effectively, they fought with an intimate knowledge of three-dimensional space that gave them advantages over enemies accustomed to more traditional battlefield environments. When the Zerathi fleet finally cleared the asteroid belt, Vorthkal had lost 4 more ships and his remaining vessels were running low on ammunition and power. The humans had sacrificed nearly their entire mining fleet, but they'd proven that industrial equipment operated by determined civilians could threaten military vessels designed for conquest. Earth's defenses waited beyond the asteroid belt, a carefully prepared killing ground that represented humanity's last stand. Luna Station commanded overlapping fields of fire from orbital platforms, surface installations, and hidden weapons embedded in the moon's crust. The ghost ship squadrons had been reinforced with every available vessel, creating a swarm of small, fast targets that would test alien tracking systems to their limits. But the centerpiece of Earth's defense was Dr. Vasquez's quantum cascade system, now charged to levels that made the control center's instruments scream warnings about imminent overload. The energy required to create a gravity well capable of trapping an alien fleet would destroy Luna Station and everything within 1,000 kilometers, but it would also give humanity's remaining forces the opportunity they needed. As the Zerathi fleet approached Earth orbit, Vorthkal found himself facing a choice that no Galactic Council commander had encountered in living memory. He could complete his mission and accept casualties that would cripple his career and devastate his forces. Or he could withdraw and report that a single star system had successfully resisted the combined might of the Zerathi Empire. Ship leader, his tactical coordinator reported, human forces are concentrating around their primary satellite. Energy readings suggest they're preparing some form of massive weapons deployment. Our projections indicate a 70% probability of fleet destruction if we proceed. The mathematics of conquest had changed. Humans had made themselves too expensive to subdue through conventional military action, but retreat would signal to the galaxy that the Council's authority could be successfully challenged, encouraging other species to attempt similar resistance. The decision was made for him when human forces opened the final phase of their defense. Dr. Kurz, Vasquez activated the quantum cascade, sending waves of space-time distortion racing outward from Luna Station. The effect was exactly as predicted. The Zerathi fleet found itself trapped in a gravity well that made escape impossible while human forces closed for point-blank combat. All units execute final assault pattern, Admiral Zhang transmitted from his command ship, Indomitable. Today we prove that free peoples cannot be conquered by those who mistake technology for courage. The final battle lasted 90 minutes and settled the question of human independence forever. Lieutenant Chen led her surviving ghost ships in suicide attacks against alien command vessels. Captain Rodriguez's improvised fleet struck from multiple directions simultaneously. The converted mining platforms and orbital defense installations poured fire into trapped enemies at ranges where even human weapons could penetrate alien shielding. When the quantum cascade finally collapsed, taking Luna Station and 3 human cruisers with it, only 7 Zerathi vessels remained operational. Vorthkal's flagship had been crippled, his fleet destroyed, and his mission proven impossible. The species he'd come to subjugate had fought with such desperate ferocity that conquest would require resources the Empire couldn't afford to expend. "Fleet Command, this is Vorthkal," he transmitted on emergency channels, his voice hollow with defeat. "Mission failure confirmed. Human resistance cannot be overcome without deploying our entire sector fleet. Recommend immediate strategic withdrawal and diplomatic reassessment. The response came 12 hours later, carrying the authority of the Zerathi High Command and the implicit approval of the Galactic Council itself. Fleet Leader Vorth Call, you are ordered to withdraw immediately. Inform the humans that the Galactic Council recognizes the Sol System as an independent territory. Further expansion of human influence beyond their current borders will be met with appropriate response. As the remaining Zerathi ships limped away from the solar system, humans throughout their territory celebrated a victory that had seemed impossible just days before. They had faced the combined might of galactic civilization and emerged bloodied but free. The cost had been enormous, nearly half their total military capability destroyed, entire colonies evacuated, and their most advanced defensive installations reduced to radioactive debris. But they had proven something that would echo throughout the galaxy for generations to come. Technological superiority was meaningless against enemies willing to pay any price for their freedom. The Galactic Council's authority rested on the assumption that species would eventually submit rather than face total destruction. Humans had called that bluff, and won. In research facilities and military bases throughout human space, the work of rebuilding began immediately. The victory had been achieved through desperate innovation and suicidal courage, but it had also revealed technologies and tactics that would serve humanity well in the future. They were no longer a species seeking their place in galactic civilization. They had become something entirely new, a people who would fight the universe itself rather than kneel to anyone's authority. The galaxy had expected submission. Instead, they'd encountered something that would change the balance of power among the stars forever. Humans had refused to negotiate, and the chaos that followed had shaken the foundations of galactic order. The question now was what humanity would do with the independence they'd earned through blood and sacrifice. 5 years after the Battle of Sol, the galaxy was a very different place. The human victory had done more than secure their independence. It had shattered the fundamental assumption that had kept the Galactic Council stable for millennia. The belief that technological superiority guaranteed political control was dead, and in its place something unprecedented was emerging. Admiral Zhang, now bearing the title of Fleet Admiral of Human Space Forces, stood on the observation deck of the newly completed Earth Station 7, humanity's largest orbital facility. Through the transparent aluminum windows, he could see construction crews putting finishing touches on the latest class of human warships. The vessels bore little resemblance to the improvised defenders that had fought the Zerathi. These ships incorporated 5 years of intensive research into technologies that the galaxy had never seen before. The Harmony is ready for her maiden voyage, reported Captain Sarah Chen, now serving as Zhang's chief of staff. Her daughter Alice had become something of a legend among human pilots, and the Chen family name carried weight throughout the solar system. Our engineers estimate she can outrun anything in the Zerathi fleet and carry enough firepower to threaten a battlecruiser. Zhang nodded, but his attention was focused on the diplomatic vessel approaching from the outer system. The ship bore the markings of the Kepler Confederation, one of 17 species that had successfully broken free from Council authority in the years since humanity's victory. What had once been unthinkable, open rebellion against galactic order, had become a movement that was reshaping civilization among the stars. The delegation that arrived at Earth Station 7 represented a revolution that was spreading across multiple sectors of the galaxy. Ambassador Tavara of the Kepler Confederation, a tall humanoid with scales that shifted color with her emotions, had been negotiating with human representatives for months. Her people had been under Vorthak control for 3 centuries, but the example of human resistance had inspired them to reclaim their independence through coordinated uprisings across their home systems. Admiral Zhang, Tavara said as she entered the conference room, her scales showing the deep blue of respectful greeting. My government has authorized me to formalize our alliance proposal. The Confederation offers mutual defense agreements, shared technology development, and coordinated resistance to Council expansion. The meeting that followed would have been impossible before humanity's refusal to submit. For the first time in recorded history, free species were coordinating military and technological resources to resist the established galactic order. The humans had proven that resistance was possible. Now other species were following their example. Dr. Elena Vasquez, her hair now showing silver streaks from years of working with exotic radiation, presented the technological sharing agreements that would transform both civilizations. The quantum field manipulation techniques we developed during our isolation can be enhanced by Kepler gravitational engineering. Combined, our technologies could produce faster-than-light travel that doesn't rely on Council-controlled jump points. The implications were staggering. The Galactic Council maintained its authority partly through control of the quantum jump infrastructure that made rapid interstellar travel possible. Independent FTL technology would free entire regions of space from Council influence, creating autonomous zones where species could develop without external interference. But humanity's transformation went beyond military technology and political alliances. The crisis that had forced their independence had fundamentally changed their approach to expansion and development. Rather than seeking integration into existing galactic civilization, humans were creating something entirely new. Commander Lisa Park, promoted to head of the Colonial Development Authority, was overseeing the most ambitious expansion program in human history. New colonies were being established not just on habitable planets, but in environments that other species considered impossible to settle. Humans were building cities in the cores of gas giants, establishing research stations near black holes, and creating agricultural facilities in asteroid fields. "We're not trying to replicate Earth environments," she explained to a gathering of colonial administrators. "We're adapting human physiology and technology to thrive anywhere. The galaxy told us we could only exist in the narrow environmental ranges they considered suitable for biological life. We're proving them wrong. The human colonies that had emerged over the past 5 years were unlike anything in galactic civilization. They combined desperate innovation with unlimited ambition, creating settlements that pushed the boundaries of what was considered possible. Children born on these colonies grew up in environments that would have been lethal to previous generations, their bodies adapted through genetic therapies and cybernetic enhancements that other species found disturbing. On New Geneva Station, orbiting the neutron star pulsar 7, Dr. James Morrison was conducting research that challenged basic assumptions about physics and engineering. The extreme gravitational and electromagnetic environment near the pulsar allowed for experiments that were impossible anywhere else in known space. "We're not just studying exotic matter," he reported to the Earth Science Council via quantum communicator. "We're learning to manufacture it. The energy densities near pulsar 7. Let us create materials with properties that make our previous quantum field manipulation look primitive." The technologies emerging from humanity's extreme environment colonies were beginning to attract attention from species throughout the galaxy. The quantum crystals produced in neutron star environments could store energy densities that dwarfed anything in Council databases. The gravitational field generators developed for gas giant colonies could manipulate space-time with precision that made traditional FTL drives look clumsy. But perhaps more importantly, these advances were being shared freely with any species willing to declare independence from Council authority. Human philosophy had evolved beyond simple survival to active encouragement of galactic rebellion. They were becoming the center of a resistance movement that threatened to completely reorganize civilization among the stars. The political implications were not lost on the Galactic Council. The ornate chambers of the Central Authority on Nexus Prime, representatives of the 3 ruling species, held emergency sessions that had been ongoing for months. The comfortable stability they'd maintained for millennia was crumbling as species after species followed humanity's example. Council Speaker Thiska of the Celestial Dominion reviewed reports that painted an increasingly dire picture. 17 species have declared independence in the past 2 years. The Kepler Confederation controls 4 sectors previously under Vorthak authority. The humans are providing advanced technology to anyone willing to resist our influence. Our economic and military advantages are being systematically eroded. The Zerathai representative, Trade Master Core 9, displayed his species' characteristic aggression in his response. "The solution is obvious. Deploy the sector fleets and crush these rebellions before they spread further." Humans proved they could resist a single expeditionary force. They cannot stand against the combined might of our full military power. But Vorthak war leader Gresh Prime disagreed with typical bluntness. The Zerathi approach failed because they underestimated human psychological profiles. These species are not rebelling because they believe they can win traditional conflicts. They are rebelling because they have decided that death is preferable to subjugation. Military force cannot defeat enemies who consider survival less important than freedom. The debate that followed revealed the fundamental crisis facing galactic civilization. The Council's authority had always rested on a simple calculation. The benefits of submission outweighed the costs of resistance. Humans had proven that calculation could be wrong, and now other species were reaching the same conclusion. The situation became critical when the Andromedan Collective, a coalition of machine intelligences that had maintained neutral status for centuries, announced formal recognition of human independence and the right of all species to self-determination. The collective's vast computational resources and technological capabilities made them nearly equal to the 3 ruling council species, and their support for the resistance movement changed the balance of galactic power. The organic species designated as human have demonstrated that political authority must be based on consent rather than technological dominance. announced Primary Node Zeta. 7 during a broadcast that reached every inhabited system in the galaxy. The Andromedan Collective will provide technical and logistical support to any civilization seeking to establish autonomous governance. The announcement was followed by the arrival of Andromedan vessels and systems throughout human space. The machine intelligences brought technologies that complemented human innovations, creating hybrid systems that surpassed anything the Council could deploy. More importantly, they brought legitimacy to the resistance movement by demonstrating that even the galaxy's most advanced civilizations supported the right to independence. Dr. Vasquez found herself working alongside Andromedan scientists whose computational abilities allowed for theoretical advances at unprecedented speeds. The quantum field manipulation technology that had saved humanity during the war was evolving into something that would revolutionize space travel, energy production, and manufacturing throughout the galaxy. They think in mathematical concepts that we could barely comprehend, she explained to Admiral Zhang during one of their regular briefings. But when we combine their theoretical capabilities with human intuition and creativity, we achieve breakthroughs that neither of our species could reach alone. The technological revolution accelerated as human colonies began producing resources and materials that had never existed in galactic commerce. The extreme environment settlements were creating substances and energy sources that made traditional economics obsolete. Species that joined the resistance movement found themselves with access to technologies that put them ahead of their former council masters. On Mars, Governor Rebecca Torres was overseeing the transformation of the Red Planet into humanity's primary industrial center. The low-gravity environment and extreme conditions that had once made Mars a frontier colony now made it ideal for manufacturing processes that were impossible on more hospitable worlds. "We're not trying to terraform Mars into a copy of Earth," she announced during the planet's independence celebration. "We're creating something entirely new. A world that combines human adaptability with environmental challenges that force constant innovation. Mars isn't becoming like Earth. It's becoming something better." The cultural changes were as dramatic as the technological advances. Human society was evolving beyond the traditional patterns that had defined them during their early space age. Children growing up in the extreme environment colonies were developing capabilities and perspectives that previous generations couldn't have imagined. They thought in terms of galactic rather than planetary scales, viewed impossible challenges as interesting problems, and considered independence so fundamental that they couldn't understand how anyone could choose subjugation. Lieutenant Alice Chen, now Captain Chen and commanding humanity's most advanced warship, represented this new generation of humans. Her vessel, the Prometheus, incorporated technologies from a dozen different species who had joined the resistance movement. The ship could outmaneuver Zerathi cruisers, outgun Vorthak battleships, and travel faster than anything in the Council fleet. "We're not the same species that the Council first contacted," she reported during a diplomatic mission to the Rigel systems. "Every crisis has made us stronger, more adaptable, more determined. They expected us to become clients in their empire. Instead, we became something they never anticipated." The resistance movement reached a tipping point when the Vegan Trade Consortium, one of the galaxy's largest economic powers, announced its withdrawal from Council authority. The consortium controlled trade routes that connected thousands of worlds, and their decision to join the human-led alliance created an economic crisis that threatened the foundation of Council power. Trademaster Ves Kai of the consortium explained their decision in terms that reflected humanity's influence on galactic thinking. "Economic prosperity means nothing without political freedom. The Council offers stability, but humans and their allies offer something more valuable, the right to determine our own destiny." The economic disruption that followed created opportunities for species that had been marginalized under Council rule. Human merchants, protected by the most advanced military technology in the galaxy, established trade networks that bypassed traditional Council-controlled routes. The quantum-enhanced ships produced in human space could carry more cargo, travel faster, and operate in environments that conventional vessels couldn't survive. Within 3 years of the vegan withdrawal, the resistance movement controlled nearly a quarter of the galaxy's inhabited systems. The Council still maintained military superiority, but their economic and political influence was fragmenting as more species chose independence over security. The transformation culminated when humanity announced the formation of the Free Galactic Alliance, a confederation of independent species committed to mutual defense and shared technological development. The alliance represented everything the Council opposed: decentralized authority, unlimited innovation, and the absolute right of species to govern themselves. Admiral Zhang, now bearing the title of Supreme Commander of Alliance Defense Forces, stood before representatives of 67 species as they signed the charter that would reshape galactic civilization.
The ceremony took place aboard New Harmony Station, humanity's first truly interstellar facility, built using technologies that represented the combined knowledge of dozens of previously isolated civilizations. "We gather here not as conquerors or subjects," Jang announced to the assembled delegates, "but as free beings who refuse to accept that technological advantage gives anyone the right to rule others. The galaxy told us to kneel. We chose to stand. Now we stand together." The Alliance fleet that assembled for the signing ceremony represented military power that rivaled anything the Council could deploy. Human quantum field ships flew alongside Kepler gravitational cruisers, Andromedan computational vessels, and warships from dozens of other species that had chosen freedom over subjugation. Each vessel incorporated technologies that were impossible under Council restrictions, creating capabilities that were already beginning to surpass those of their former masters. The galaxy that emerged from humanity's refusal to negotiate was chaotic, dangerous, and full of unprecedented possibilities. The comfortable stability of Council rule was gone, replaced by a dynamic system where species rose and fell based on their own achievements rather than their willingness to submit to external authority. In the Galactic Council chambers on Nexus Prime, Speaker Tiskau reviewed the latest intelligence reports with growing resignation. Half the galaxy was now outside Council control, and the rate of defection was accelerating. The humans had not simply won their independence, they had inspired a revolution that was fundamentally changing the nature of galactic civilization. "Perhaps," she said to her fellow council members, "it is time to consider that the universe has outgrown our authority. These species are not rebelling against us because they are primitive or misguided. They are rebelling because they have decided that freedom is more valuable than the security we offer." The Council's response to this new reality would determine whether the galaxy faced decades of warfare or evolved into something unprecedented. A civilization where authority was earned rather than imposed, where innovation flourished without restriction, and where the right to self-determination was considered more fundamental than the convenience of unified rule. Humans had refused to negotiate when faced with an ultimatum that seemed to offer only submission or destruction. In choosing neither, they had created a third option that was reshaping the galaxy itself. The chaos they had unleashed was dangerous and unpredictable, but it was also the chaos of species learning to be free. And in that chaos, humanity found something worth more than survival, the chance to build a universe where freedom was not a privilege granted by the powerful, but a right claimed by anyone brave enough to fight for it.